house at this time of night. So we will forgive him for not being here. So the format of tonight's program is pretty straightforward. We want to give everybody kind of an opening 2 minutes to tell us what they think the most pressing environmental issue for Asheville is, or their philosophy or approach to environmental protection, however they want to use those 2 minutes. And then we'll just go into an open Q&A, and I'll call on you, and you can ask any of the candidates anything you'd like. And I would ask again for time constraints that you address your question to a specific candidate, as opposed to just asking all the candidates. If every candidate responds to every question, we won't finish when we want to. So does that sound good? Does that work for everybody? Okay, great. So we will start right here.
Can everyone hear? The sun's kind of tinny from up here, but as long as y'all can hear. My name is Gordon Smith. I'm a member of Asheville City Council. I was elected in 2009. I really appreciate y'all throwing this in the last month here before the election. We're going to have a lot of these forums, and we'll get to know each other's spiels well enough that we could recite each other's, but it's a really great opportunity to get out in front of people and talk about what we've accomplished and what we'd like to accomplish as members of City Council. These last 4 years have been a real honor to be able to serve, and I've been very fortunate to be a part of a team that has advanced our environmental sustainability here in the city of Asheville. Sometime back, there was a carbon reduction goal established for the city of Asheville to reduce our carbon emissions by 80% by the year 2030. We've made amazing strides towards that. We were going to try to do it at 2% a year. Then we said, let's bump it up to 4% a year. And then last year, we reduced our city's carbon emissions by 6.42%. This is part of an ongoing effort that you're going to hear a lot of people talk about tonight, so I won't spend too much time on it at this moment. But going forward, when we're talking about sustainability, we're also talking about the triple bottom line. And the city strategic plan that we created this year addresses our economic sustainability and our social justice, as well as our environmental protection. So while we're all talking here tonight and talking about the environmental side of things, I want you also to know that we have been able to bring really good employers here and help to begin to raise that median wage. And that going forward, as we're looking at smart growth strategies for the city, those are going to include transportation initiatives as well as affordable housing initiatives, so we can address both economic and social pieces with that. Of course, as we get a more dense city, we're going to also be able to be more environmentally friendly going forward, as we can get more people out of their cars and more people within walking and biking distance of their jobs. So I'll stop there. Thank you very much for having me.
Hi, I'm Gwen Whistler, and I'm a city council candidate. I moved to Asheville 7 years ago. Before that, I was a business executive. The last full-time job I had, I was the CEO of the Coleman Company, the camping gear company, and we sponsored and worked with the national parks, and obviously just being outside and having fun camping was one of the things that we supported. Since I moved to Asheville, I've been involved with some organizations that I consider pretty sustainable. I'm the president of the Botanical Gardens, which focuses on native plants. And I'm involved with Strive Not to Drive. I was one of the chairmen of Strive Not to Drive, and I'm just altogether interested in sustainability. I walk and ride my bike as much as I can. I walked here tonight. So I think City Council, I think one of the big reasons people come to Asheville and stay in Asheville is because of our environment. Not only how beautiful it is, but how people think about our environment. So I think one of the big responsibilities of the leadership is to maintain and improve our environment. So I consider it a big responsibility, and so sustainability ought to underline every decision that we make. So I look forward to tonight. Thanks for having us.
First of all, I'd like to thank you for sponsoring this and inviting me to this format. My name is Mike Lanning. I grew up here in Asheville. I'm a native. I grew up in West Asheville. After high school, I entered the United States Air Force and served in the Air Force. And after that, once I got out, I went into law enforcement here locally at the Sheriff's Department. And then later on, went to work for the Asheville Police Department. So I spent 30 years working here in the street, serving the public for the city of Asheville. The reason I got involved in this race is there's a lot of issues that are going on internally in the city, and I'd like to address some of those issues. Again, thank you for the invitation, and hope to be able to answer some of your questions. Thanks.
I'm John Mile. I'm a candidate for mayor in this year's city council elections, and like Mike, I'm a native of West Asheville. Grew up here, graduated from Montreat Anderson Junior College, and then later UNC Asheville. And I'm going to take a couple of seconds of my time to recognize the gentleman from Lenore Ryan. Great connection between your school and the city of Asheville. Former city manager Doug Bean earned his undergraduate degree at Lenore Ryan before he went to Chapel Hill and got his master's in public affairs. But Doug was the manager, working with multiple councils over the years, that literally revitalized downtown Asheville. So what you see and what you enjoy, you can thank to you can say thanks to it alone. Great connection there, great friend. I appreciate also the opportunity tonight, the invitation, and also would commend you for the great work you've done and are continuing to do in the region, not just in the city of Asheville. A lot of things I could delve into with my background and history with the city of Asheville. I tended to be on the inside of the organization, so I like to say that I know the organization from the bottom up and from the inside out. One example of what I think we could do as a community, I was taken with Gordon's remarks about reducing carbon emissions. I know it's been a serious effort, and the city's done a great job so far. But what if we could move that in terms of the public carbon footprint in the downtown area and all over the city in double digits? And we used to do that. Before we cared about the environment, when gas was cheap, I could leave Tunnel Road, because that was the only way through the mountain in those days. I could leave the tunnel and drive all the way down College Street, all the way past Kleeman Avenue to West Asheville, and only hit one red light. It was called synchronization. The signals were synchronized so that nobody hit more than one light coming through town. And that, folks, was before we had digital technology. That was done with analog technology. I'm suggesting that from the information I have, just today, I quickly looked this up. A quick number. According to the Environmental Defense Fund, a vehicle idling 10 minutes will put 1 pound of carbon dioxide into the air. It is further estimated that in New York City alone, the amount of time idling at stoplights in the downtown area puts 130,000 tons of carbon dioxide into the air every year. What if we could do that? But we're not doing some of the easy, basic things. And I would contend, instead of throwing money at another problem, we could use the technology we have to do it better. Thank you.
I forgot to say that Isabel's the timekeeper over there, so here a little keep going on.
Okay. Hi, I'm Cecil Boswell. I am on City Council now, one term, starting in 2009. I want to take this conversation up to about 30,000 feet, because I think that's where we need to concentrate. We're facing a global crisis. It is an absolutely profound, life-threatening crisis to our species. If we don't get global climate change under control, doing everything we can at the human level to change what's going on, our grandchildren are going to live in hell. There's no question about that. The new international report from the United Nations makes it clear that we can make the difference. We can make the cuts to make the difference, but we have to decide to do that, and it has to happen everywhere at every local level. And so in my first 4 years on council, I've come to realize how much the city could and will do if we're willing to do it. We've got this great program that Gordon mentioned. You know, we started with 2% a year, we up to 4%, we're actually doing better than that. Now we're moving out to the community. Now we're beginning to think, how can we do it at the community level? That's why I've started a Zero Energy District project in the River Arts District, starting with New Belgium, which is part of Fort Zed, the Fort Collins Zero Energy District. Starting with them and talking with partners, including the Restaurant Association that has put solar panels on this and many other restaurants here in town. We've got to cut and cut and cut and our use of energy and increase our local production. That's why I put solar photovoltaic panels on my house in May. We've got to do that everywhere as fast as we can possibly do it. I mean, really, you should have walked here tonight like Gwen did, if you're within reasonable distance. I didn't. I drove my Prius, but that was the best investment I could make in a car because I wanted to reduce my footprint as much as I could for what driving I have to do. We must do this. I mean, we should be screaming. We should be out in the streets protesting tonight. I really believe that. Deeply, deeply, I believe that, which is why I've fought the pipeline, the XL pipeline. I've been in Washington fighting that. I've worked with Duke Energy. I've been talking with them about how we can do a smart grid system here in Asheville and begin to reduce our footprint. It's coming. We can either join that or help kill our grandchildren. Thank you.
My name is Esther Manheimer. I'm a candidate for mayor, and I'm currently the city's vice mayor. I was first elected in 2009. And let me just say, first of all, thank you all for having all of us tonight and learning more about the candidates. I've had an opportunity to speak to this group about the issues about water facing Asheville, and that was very enjoyable, and it was nice to hear so many people interested in the issue. I'd also like to thank one of the sponsors of tonight, the Sierra Club, for endorsing my campaign and providing volunteers for my campaign in the polls yesterday. That was greatly appreciated, and I very much appreciate the support from Asheville in general. I want to talk about two other things that haven't been hit on yet that maybe I'm certain some of you already know a lot about, but that highlight how important it is that the city collaborate and partner with folks that work with the organizations that are sponsoring this event tonight. I'll give you two examples. Julie Mayfield works tirelessly on environmental issues and has really pushed City Council in the direction of taking a strong position on coal. And this City Council has adopted a resolution taking a position against the coal ash ponds that are here in Buncombe County. And I want to thank WC Alliance for really highlighting that issue and making sure we're taking. And that's an example of how your city that has certainly a progressive city council that's working hard on environmental issues that depends on community partners to further that. The other one, another sponsor of the event tonight, Just Economics, really made it possible for the city to take the right position on a living wage policy. And this city council, again, adopted a living wage policy which says if you're going to be a contractor bidding on contracts for the city, you must pay your employees a living wage. Now, the legislature undid it just recently. Our state legislature said that local governments cannot require contractors to pay a living wage, and that's another issue. But Asheville has taken that strong position, and it's through a partnership with Just Economics that is possible. I'm hearing my bell, so I'll quit talking, but I just wanted to highlight those two partnerships that are vital to the functioning of this city government.
So we should also say that Esther needs to leave in about 10 minutes, right? Okay. So let's do this first. If anybody has questions for Esther, we'll start there.
I wanted to ask you to follow up on what you had told us about the water issue in the lawsuit and what council's role is going to be in that moving forward.
Okay. So the question is about the current status of the water lawsuit, the water situation. So for just as a quick background, a bill was passed by this legislature that took Asheville City water system and transferred it entirely to basically a new entity that would be in conjunction with the Metropolitan Sewage District. Asheville filed a lawsuit against the state seeking to stop that taking, and as you probably know, the Asheville City voters overwhelmingly voted 86% to oppose the transfer of the water system. We are really lucky that we had forefathers and mothers, hopefully too, in Asheville that made the decision to buy 20,000 acres of watershed property that are out towards the Black Mountain area. And that is pristine property that is our watershed resource. And those assets were included in this taking. Right now, the lawsuit is in Wake County in front of a civil superior court judge, Judge Howard Manning. And what he has done is he has asked all of the parties, including the state and the Metropolitan Sewage District and the city, to agree to have a final hearing which will determine the outcome of the lawsuit 5 months from now. So basically, the city gets to hold its water system in the meantime while the case is pending, still running the water system, And then approximately 5 months from now, he'll have a hearing where he'll hear from all the parties and then issue probably later, within a month or so, a ruling on whether or not the bill is constitutional, essentially. And if it is not constitutional, then the water system cannot be taken.
And if it is, will you fight it?
Oh, absolutely. If the judge doesn't rule in our favor, we, the city, would appeal it. Absolutely.
So right behind you, Lou.
Esther, could you say why we should give $2 million to an art museum?
The question is, why should we give $2 million to an art museum? The art museum investment is part of a $111 million 5-year capital improvement investment program in Asheville. And the reason for that is because investment in our community is the only thing that will help Asheville sustain itself financially on its own, not subject to the whims of the legislature, not subject to the whims of the federal government. If your city council neglects its own assets, that being in this case the Pack Place, and lets these things go and run and become dilapidated, then people would be crying out that we hadn't, taken care of our city. And so that building was voted on by the public in 1986, 87, for a $3 million bond. And I think the way to look at this is that when that happened, the city citizens said, we supported a program like this. And when they did that, they didn't say, and that's it. Never rehabilitate it, never enhance it, don't ever do another thing with it. That's not the way this works. And so the way I view the art museum funding, I know it's getting a lot of attention, but it's really part of this broader concept of investing in our community so that we have a place that is strong and a place that is ripe for job growth, of quality types of job growth, and basically a long-term situation that will sustain us financially.
One more question for Esther, and then she needs to go. Yeah.
So with that explanation in regards to the arts museum, and I'm an arts person, shouldn't that be also addressed to our streets, our sidewalks, the cleanliness, the graffiti?
Absolutely. It has to be the full package.
And what in this way since before I moved here, and I haven't, I've come up for a few years, I've been here over a year. And I haven't seen it talked about, but I haven't seen it addressed. Here we are with the art,
What have you not,
Paul.
You must be with the city, is that correct? No.
Okay, we're not going to get into a debate among the audience. Paul, thank you very much.
And I'll be glad to speak to somebody afterwards if that's necessary. I think everyone currently on our city council knows what investments have been made in this community thus far. Some of them predate the city council, obviously, and some of them have occurred. There's a new bus that we purchased, just drove by, a hybrid bus. So, for example, but there certainly have been investments made. That would be an error to say that. While I've served on city councils, new sidewalk construction, road repair, and that's what you're talking about. But in terms of the future expenditures, it's part of a $111 million capital improvement program that is being rolled out over the next 5 years, and it includes investments in the River Arts District, major investments in the River Arts District, in the South Slope of downtown, but also sidewalks on both sides of Hendersonville Road from the I-40 connector all the way down to Long Shoals. That is happening next year. So this isn't an isolated investment where we cherry-picked it. It is part of a comprehensive program to make sure that our city stays strong and enhanced, and it continues to be a wonderful place for everyone to enjoy.
Thank you very much. All right, the floor is open.
Question,
What's up?
Mike. What are some of the internal issues you would like to address?
Well, as far as what got me involved in this race was at the beginning was issues at the police department. Now, I'm not going to say the issues came about because of this chief. From the time I started in '87, there's always been problems at the police department with retention. The problem now is, since July 1, the fiscal year starts July 1, I've been told the police department's lost 14 officers. and that's unacceptable. I have a document that was sent to me, and it showed in August of 20th of this year, we were 27 officers short, according to the police department's own analysis. They just recently hired 16 officers to put them through BLET, which means you, the taxpayers, are going to have to pay $42,000 for each one of the 16 that's going through BLET currently, which takes about 4 months, and then another 4 months after that through orientation of the cities. It takes a fresh, no experienced person to go through BLET and to be hired by the police department. It takes about 8 months. Now, the police department's also hired, I think, 6 people that are already certified, which means they went through BLET at some other agency, and that'll take them approximately 4 months. What I'm afraid of, they can play with the numbers all they want, but when you're 27 officers short August 20th, and you've hired 16 officers, it's going to take approximately 8 months, and 4 months for the others. How many more are they going to lose? The morale is terrible there, and it's costing the taxpayers a lot of money to replace them, and something needs to be done. And it's upper management of the police department. It's upper management, captain and above. Lieutenant above is good, but the problem is with the management of the police department as far as captain and above, they live by there's a double standard. They're not held accountable, and that needs to change. And the reason I got involved is nothing against the current council members. I worked internally and I seen the problems from the inside. And the first thing when you start running for office, they bring you in through an orientation process and they really bend over backwards to kiss your butt, to make you feel welcome. And I know that. I've seen it going through the orientation. And they also tell you other things to orientation. You can't do this, you can't do that. City manager runs this. Well, it's true, city manager runs the city, but you have a lot of bearing on which way the city's going to go in personnel issues. And that's the reason I got involved is I would be hands-on. I would be hands-on, and there's issues. There's lawsuits. I've been involved in 2 or 3 lawsuits over the years suing the city. Lawsuits that didn't have to take place. For instance, people keep talking about the water system being taken over by the state, and I support the lawsuit, and it's wrong. But 2 years ago, the city, one person in the city decided arbitrarily to take sick time from officers who'd been there as long as I had, 20 years, and to reduce their sick time down. Some people lost over 1,000 hours of sick time. One person decided to do that, so we had to take the city to federal court and get our sick time back. We won, and we're victorious in that. What the state is doing to Asheville is no different from what the city has done to employees. It's hypocritical, I think, as far as the city's position, to say that, what the state's doing is wrong. I don't agree with what the state did, but the state's doing exactly what they can because they can. The city does the same thing. They've bullied people in the past too long, I think.
Hi, I'm Alan Rosenthal, and Gordon, I'll give this to you. So we just heard from Esther about the 5-year plan, and so I was thinking about sidewalks, and we heard about Hendersonville Road and all that. So my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, my understanding has been that the sidewalks on Henderson Road, Joe Road, and other places have been replaced or built when there's a water problem. If there's a water main break or something, they got to rip up everything, so they'll put a sidewalk down. So I have a kind of a 2-tier question in that respect. Are we going to pave sidewalks from I-40 down to Long Shoals regardless? Is a new policy that we don't have to wait for water problems? And so that's part A. And then part B, with this, what I'm not hearing then is, are we waiting 5 years, or where, perhaps, on the 5-year plan, are we going to replace the horrendous and dangerous liability-filled sidewalks on Biltmore Avenue and other areas? Are they in the plan? Or do we have to wait 5 years to get a decent sidewalk? Thank you.
Can you state what the question is before you answer it, Gordon? Because we couldn't hear
I'm going to do my best to restate this. You tell me if I get it right.
All right.
First of all, Alan was asking, was the policy of the city to put new sidewalks in when we were doing water projects? And did the Hendersonville Road project represent a change in policy in regards to that? Close enough?
Close enough.
And also about the condition of the sidewalks right here downtown on Biltmore, and is that part of an improvement plan?
And if so, if not, or whatever, when are we going to see some movement on these sidewalks?
Okay. So the city used to be able to, under the law, use 5% of water revenues to do improvements when we were having to replace a water line. So if we replaced a water line and tore up the street to do it, we could use water revenue to replace the street and at the same time add curb and gutter, add sidewalk, add bike lane. Well, that went away thanks to a hostile legislature that we have. The policy of the city, however, is to maintain the sidewalks that it has and also to create new sidewalks. So the 3 miles that we're going to have on Hendersonville Road is a wonderful partnership with NCDOT. We've been working on it for a few years to get it to come together. I'm really glad it's going to start construction next year. And it's through other partnerships that we've been able to get more sidewalks done. Emma Road, Patton Avenue, we've been able to go down Tunnel Road as well, and to be able to make these partnerships happen. So it's independent of that 5%. It used to be that if water line stuff was happening, we could improve the road, including sidewalks, with the water revenue. That got taken.
Not downtown.
And the second part being downtown, as far as sidewalk maintenance, we've got a lot to keep up with, and we've been, over the last 3 years, in addition to contending with the Great Recession and a hostile legislature, been trying to plan for the future. And so as Esther was discussing the investments in our infrastructure to grow our revenues, that's part of what we're going to have to do in order to do the maintenance that we need to do on what we've got. The downtown, that's okay. The downtown, there was a big debate over whether to have a business improvement district and a taxing authority and all this, and that debate happened last year, and the bid ended up not happening. But one of the things that City Council committed to doing in this budget was we did set aside money for downtown improvements to be able to make sure that things were going to be cleaner and we could do more sidewalk repairs. And I'll need Cecil to correct me if I'm wrong. I don't know if you can keep this number in your head, but I think there's $120,000 dedicated. $150,000. Not even on council knows the number. $150,000 devoted towards some of these downtown improvements for next year, and this is going to be an ongoing expenditure because those needs, regardless of whether the bid happened, it was universally recognized that downtown had these needs of being able to address graffiti and address the sidewalk needs, that stuff wasn't going to go away no matter what that debate decided. So City Council decided in its budget that was going to be a need that we needed to address.
For perspective's sake, if I may, so give us an idea of what it costs for a sidewalk from a corner to corner. What does that cost to replace? I mean, it doesn't have to be accurate, just a ballpark. Yeah, don't say anything.
Number in your head?
No, I did 2 years ago when we were talking about going out to the vets quarters, and I don't remember the cost per foot.
It's more than.
It's high, it's amazing.
It's hundreds of dollars per linear foot.
Yeah.
So that 150,000 really doesn't
Well,
cover
for instance,
anything.
the 3 miles down Hendersonville Road is going to run north of $3 million to put in.
So what is 150, and I don't mean to be debate, so please excuse me, but to 150,000, what could that possibly help?
Well, you're talking about the difference between construction and repair.
Right.
Okay, all right, thank you.
You bet.
All right, another question? Really? Okay, great.
How do we fund cycling? Like, where does that money come from, and is there some to draw from in the next, like, 10 years?
Who's that? Who's that to?
I don't know, anybody.
Cecil.
Who wants it? Gwen? Anybody? And sorry, the microphone, we just turned it off. This is a new sound system and whatever, it's not working right now, so sorry about that.
Funding for bike lanes would come out of either operating, there's sort of two separate pieces of capital projects. So there's CIP, and then there's sort of the run-of-the-mill capital projects. So it could come from both of those. Over the next 5 years, there's a lot of money allocated in the 5-year plan in CIP that is in multimodal transportation projects. So theoretically, bike lanes would come out of that. And the city has tried and successfully partnered with state organizations and federal organizations to help get some of that funding, as well as partnering with a lot of private organizations, like some of the greenways that have been put in have really been, the city puts the money in, and then there's private donations that go into it. So, does that help?
I can add a little to it if it's okay. I'll just do this in 30 seconds. So the multimodal transportation, we're working on a comprehensive plan so we can link everything together, but part of if you're going to be cycling around this town, you're also going to need the greenway connections as well as having those connect to transit so you can actually reliably get around on your bicycle. So we're adding to the greenway system with some really great partners like Wynn was describing, but that's also a big part of what we're doing down in the River District with our $111 million capital improvements plan.
Yeah, Mark.
Yeah, I just want a quick question for John. As far as your other issues that are sort of do you have certain pet projects or certain areas that you, of expertise that you're wanting to make changes on? Is there something that, a couple talking points about your overall platform you might be able to share?
Thank you. Very much so. First and foremost on my list remains fiscal responsibility. Some of the numbers we've heard bounced around here speak to that. For example, the city does have the capital improvement plan for multimodal, and the city has done a good job, in my opinion, of funding that until now. What we saw happen just in recent weeks was that at the end of June, when this year's budget was adopted, they put a big chunk of money into that over the next 5 years, I think it was. And then within a couple of weeks, the Eagle Market Street development came up before council, and they immediately took $850,000 out of multimodal to help fund that. My concern is the city has a tendency to respond to every good thing coming down the pipe. Somebody gets shortchanged when we take $850,000 out of a multimodal CIP in order to fund a perhaps needed downtown development. I would also say that another very important issue to me, and the gentleman over here alluded to it a while ago, is the issue with graffiti downtown. That's part of the environment. It's not necessarily green, but it's offensive to see a lot of graffiti. Fact, we have only 4 officers now on a downtown beat. That's down to an all-time low of 4. One of the worst offended sites in town, I'm told, is the side of the Jackson building, which is immediately across the street from the police department. We can't even stop the people across the street from police headquarters from messing up walls. I'm saying, to echo a little bit of what Mike Lanning said, we have resources, we have money, but our priorities are terribly misaligned with those. And the last thing I'll say on that level has to do with finance. It has to do with what we don't do to align with our interests. I recently put in a new heating and cooling system in my home this summer, and I was forced to replace the furnace, and I thought, well, let's just do the whole thing and do the heating and air conditioning, and we'll get an upgrade to a very state-of-the-art, environmentally friendly HVAC system. And we did. And a few weeks after the project was finished, I got a letter from the city inspector's office. Now, the contractor pulled the permit, they came out and looked at the work, they inspected it, they gave us the final, everything was good. We got this really cool letter that said, because of what you just did and it meets these criteria for the city's policy on environmentally friendly HVAC, you might get up to, and I think it was 20% of your building, permit fee refunded. And then you read on, it says, if you're over age 65. Now, first of all, I'm getting up there, folks, but I'm not 65 yet. And the city's own policies only incentivize people to do that if they're over 65. What about my son who just built his first home in the city limits? What about younger people? We aren't aligning what we say we want with what we actually do, would be my bottom line. Thank you.
Could I say something?
Sure.
I'd like to address the graffiti problem. The problem with graffiti is that if the city had a policy to where if graffiti was on a wall, on personal, somebody's business, they had a certain time limit that it was at the expense of the business to have it cleaned off. And I think that's very, very unfair to penalize and punish the business. The second problem is you've only got 2 statutes basically in North Carolina that cover the vandalism, or the graffiti, and that's vandalism and damage to property. Vandalism, it deals with basically the amount, the cost of the damage, how much it costs to fix it or repair it, and then you've got damage if it's going to permanently damage it. One of the things I really would like to do, as I get elected, I'd like to go to legislation and have them strengthen those laws, because currently they're not worth enforcing. The DA's office won't, unless there's a lot of damage, the DA's office is not gonna pursue them because there's no teeth in the law. And that can be handled, if you wanna work as a legislator, work on those type of issues and get those laws changed.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm John Adams, and I'd like to hear something. Sorry, my name is John Adams, and I would like to hear something a little bit more strategic in nature and forward-looking about economic development. Now, the context of my question is that there's a belief driven by federal activity in the 1960s around the Economic Development Administration and whatnot, that economic development has to do with building buildings and creating jobs, and that is widely now not believed to be possible. You don't create a job, you displace a job, or you displace the wealth that creates the jobs. In that context, looking at it from the perspective of 2013, what does it mean to improve the economic well-being of Asheville?
So direct your question to a particular candidate.
I'll direct my question to whoever wants to jump up and grab it.
I thank you for your question, because I think that there have been older ideas of economic development that have driven the conversation for a long time, and it's been exciting this year to have the opportunity to look at this in some new ways. One of the elements is looking at median wage and looking at the wages in your community and are they rising. If you're just looking at number of jobs, or you're looking at a lot of minimum wage jobs, then you're still having a lot of people who aren't able to get ahead. So city went ahead with living wage policies. We got stymied with that, but I for one haven't given up on the possibility of achieving a lot of that in the future. Another thing is with our economics incentives policies, we were chasing a lot of smokestacks and going after these big employers, and in some ways have been kind of successful. GE Aviation, Linamar, New Belgium, they're going to come in and create good wage jobs. However, a lot of our innovation economy people and our small and medium-sized homegrown businesses were really left out of that process. And so earlier this year, I went to the Planning and Economic Development Committee and initiated a process by which we're going to be re-examining our economic incentives and having a look at how can we look more at our local economy and become a more resilient, independent local economy without having to chase all those smokestacks from around the world to come here. So I think those are two pieces of it that are really important.
Anybody else want to?
Yeah, I'll jump in on this one. The biggest single drain on our local economy, the biggest outflow of dollars from our local economy is for energy costs. We're paying for coal from mountains in Kentucky and West Virginia. We're paying for fuel probably from Texas mostly now, and maybe from Venezuela and some from Saudi Arabia, depending on how you weigh where the oil comes from. Fracking natural gas, all these energy costs leave the community. Every time we can save those dollars here, it makes a difference here. I mean, my system on my house that I installed in May is going to pay for itself in about 5 to 6 years, at which point I'll be getting free electricity off my roof. I'm at net zero. Anybody can do that today. You can get a loan from a bank and finance a solar system. You'll be paying less for your payments than you would be paying for your electric bill. I mean, that's where solar has gotten today. We can do that. And what's so cool about economic development, I went out to Fort Collins when I learned that New Belgium was coming here and learned what they're doing in Fort Collins. They're part of a net zero district in Fort Collins, Colorado. I went out to visit and visited with the utility people there, with Colorado State University, with the engines lab there, with the businesses that are coming into Fort Collins to join in that effort. We can make that happen. I've been working with Stephanie Monson, who's head of the RABTIP, the River Arts District Transportation Improvement Project. She is wildly excited that we can begin to attract those businesses here to join New Belgium, which is going to do a net zero plant here. That's their goal, is to produce the energy they need on their plant. We have FLS Energy down there working on distributing solar across the Southeast and around the world, really, around the country anyway. I mean, these are the drivers of tomorrow's energy, tomorrow's economy, and we can attract those people. Why? To me, it's not so much the incentives. I don't personally believe that our incentives program for New Belgium made a bunch of difference. It was because it's a worker-owned cooperative, and those people want to work here. I don't think we really necessarily pulled the jet engine thing. They already had a plant here, and they wanted to keep it going. And we had to participate with the state. But I mean, I don't believe in those actual direct incentives. I believe in making Asheville so damn cool that when an executive thinks, where do I want to raise my kids? They'll think, whoa, I could go to Philly? No, I'm going to New York? No, I want to go to Asheville. I want to go to 12 Bones with Barack. You know, I want to come to a place where I want my children to grow up, because they're going to be raising their families here. And so to me, making Asheville the very best place it can be is the economic driver we can provide, along with that energy piece, because I really believe that the solar power stations we've installed, you know, there's now 5 of them around town here that are car chargers that BioWheels Solar put in, using some grant money they got. Well, they're working on a place halfway from here to Atlanta, a restaurant where they can put in another solar charger so people can actually drive from Atlanta to here with an electric car. They can then come here to tour Asheville in electric cars and recharge here. I mean, this is the future that's happening. It's happening right in front of us, and we can join it or we can ignore it. But that's, to me, the economic future for Asheville.
I might add at this point, there's a very good chance that New Belgium will not open up. Also, the question I have for you, Cecil, is there are parts of West Asheville that look like third world countries. Now, they'll talk about $2 million in the Art Museum. Is that going to make Asheville cool and at the expense of parts of West Asheville that are in horrible condition?
Okay,
Repeat the question. Repeat the question.
Okay, I'll repeat the question. The question was two-parted. One is, to condense it, a lot of West Asheville is in rough shape. Streets, sidewalks, I think that's what you're referring to, infrastructure in West Asheville. And the second part was, how is the $2 million for the Art Museum going to help West Asheville? Yes, there are roads in disrepair in West Asheville. There are roads in disrepair around the city. West Asheville has some of the worst of them. I'm real clear on that. And unfortunately, given our financial situation, our repair program on roads has been on about a 70 to 75 year resurfacing plan, and the standard is 30 or 35 years. So we've been really stretching out repaving. We need to repave more. There's no question about it. The Art Museum piece, I think, is going to directly affect West Asheville, starting from the River District. And I think the Art Museum question has been framed badly in the public, in public knowledge. It's part of a 5-year plan. It's the last $2 million for a $25 million improvement in the Art Museum. If they don't raise the private money, the city's not going to spend it. It's not necessarily coming out of this year's. In fact, I doubt that it'll be sooner than a few years before they raise the rest of the money and then ask for the city's participation. Now, what's going to happen with that art museum? The changes that are going on is not just shelling out money for art. It's creating a museum that has the HVAC system that will qualify it to have world-class art. Right now, we can't get the Renoir tour, we can't get the Rembrandt tour, because the insurance companies will not allow those tours to come to Asheville because that art museum is not good enough. When they do the improvements that they're planning there, we're going to qualify for the kind of shows that people travel to Raleigh, to Charlotte, to Atlanta, to Columbia, South Carolina to see today. People are going to come here to see real art, the really high-test stuff. And those people who come here for the weekend to see the really high-test show are going to go to local galleries. And they're going to support the artists in the River Arts District, which is part of West Asheville. It's a big part of West Asheville. So it's going to have a spin-off. And I don't know if the numbers that Pam Myers is offering about the art museum are true. I mean, how could we project? But what we're going to see is that Asheville will become a destination art location in a way that has not yet been. And that's why we renamed the buses Art. I mean, this is an art city, and we're going to make that clear. We're going to get there, and $2 million out of a $110 million capital improvement is not a lot of money for taxpayers here to pay, I don't think. I'm happy to pay my city taxes. Because we're going
before we go on, I just wanted to add one piece to what Cecil said. We had been on a 60-year road resurfacing schedule. In last year's budget, we doubled the amount going towards road resurfacing. I don't have the whole list of roads in West Asheville that are going to address next year as far as being resurfaced, but Vermont is on the list. Vermont's getting done next year.
Well, I'd like to say this, growing up in West Asheville, I actually grew up just up the street from where she lives now. Growing up in West Asheville, the roads West Asheville, I'll be real honest, the city's never really taken good care of West Asheville from the time I grew up. And I was living in West Asheville before West Asheville was cool. West Asheville's cool now, you know, and so they're getting attention, that's good. Because what's always happened is the people that had ran this city for many, many years lived on Kimberly Avenue. They lived on that corridor. And the same attorney group for years and years either had someone on council or they had the mayor. And so Asheville, in my opinion, humble opinion, it's never been taken care of. So West Asheville, as far as I'm concerned, the city has never taken care of West Asheville like it should. And, you know, my neighborhood, well, the neighborhood I grew up in, Vermont, one of the pretty streets in, it's one of the pretty streets in town. And when I went to Vermont to meet Gordon for lunch, I couldn't believe how bad a shape it was. So West Asheville just needs a lot of improvements. And thank God it's getting focused, but people are focused on it now.
I'm going to defer to Lynn, but I would like to say a word about, or Gwen, not Lynn. Would you like to say something about the museum? Because I also have I think it's something that we're all very staked out on, so if you want to.
I wasn't going to talk about the museum, but I will say that West Asheville is starting to get a little bit of attention. I think the form-based code project and experiment that's going on over there will really, I think it'll really help along the business district along there, and hopefully, if it works, then we can use that form-based code to actually start doing some development and planning on the rest of the city. So I think, I guess I would agree that historically, probably we haven't spent as much time in West Asheville and focused on West Asheville, but hopefully it's going to actually lead us forward in development planning.
I would say, just to tie back to your question about museums versus West Asheville, Bill Ferris was an interim city manager here back in the early 90s, 93, I think, through 94. Bill was a former municipal planner and city manager from Wilmington. Bill had a real passion for how cities are designed and how they work. Bill and I were in West Asheville one day looking at a problem, I forget, a street or storm sewer or something. And Bill said, "Do you realize, John, that this is the most perfectly designed part of Asheville?" I said, "No, I grew up here." He said, "Well, think of the main corridor as the spine, Haywood Road. And off of that come the ribs on the fish, and those were the residential streets." And there was this moment, it was an aha moment for me. I grew up in West Asheville. We owned a car, but we rarely ever took it anywhere. We walked to church, we walked to school, we walked to the grocery store, we walked to the barber shop. We might once a month have taken the car somewhere, but that was extremely rare. And to top that off, the bus stop was right in front of my house. I'm just saying that if we wanted to invest in making this town more livable, I would invest it in those things that are already assets that we can improve upon and draw people here. I'm not against art. I'm not against artists. I have way too many artist friends to do that. What I'm against is a $2 million gift to a tenant when in fact the landlord contractually with the city of Asheville for that facility is the Pack Place Arts and Sciences Board. If we're going to give money, you give it to the landlord for improvements, not to a tenant. And that's my position.
So we have time for maybe one more question.
Gordon mentioned density and increasing density as an important part moving forward and thinking about sustainability in our future. And I'm wondering if someone else could comment on your thoughts on density and the strategy for moving forward with density, while at the same time a strategy for maintaining and increasing affordable housing.
Yeah, I can comment on that. We passed a rule a couple years ago now. I think it's 2 years ago. They all run together. Attempting to get developers to bump up density and affordability and energy consciousness. It was a formula that if you met certain affordability and greening rules, you could double the density of a zoning area within 1/8 of a mile of the transit routes. The idea being that if you can get a little more density close to transit, especially if it's affordable and green in some combination, it's going to improve the city, it's going to make a more livable place for the person who rents or owns it, and it'll enhance use of the transit. As it turns out, probably partly at least due to the recession, nobody's taken advantage of that. You know, we thought we crafted a pretty careful thing, both from the economic development side and from the housing and affordable housing side, and from the energy side. Housing and Economic Development weighed in on it. SACE, the Sustainability Advisory Committee, weighed in on it. We thought we had a good package and nobody's taken advantage of it. So we tried. What we have allowed are things like the large font, a development by Mountain Housing up behind the McDonald's on Merriman there, which has fortunately shown to have less traffic impact than the neighbors were afraid of, and more transit use than we even hoped for. So we're trying to shape that affordable, green, close to transit. It's tough though, because we can't mandate what private developers do. We can't tell you, you must do this with your property. We can only attempt to incent it. One of the incentives, I didn't realize was only 65 and older. I thought we were offering a discount on building permits for greening. I think we are.
And that's what it was. It just, I've got a letter that said if you're age 65 or older.
I was unaware that it was 65 and older. But anyway, we're looking for those things, and we're eager to hear great ideas that anybody hears from other cities. Because the easiest thing for us to do is to take a model that someone else has found to work and implement it here. So we got to get there. Clearly, we got to get there.
Do you guys
I don't know if that answers your question.
do you want to?
I hate that you cut me out of this question. I'd love to talk more about it.
Yes, please.
But if y'all want to go first, please do. So, one of the things that I had the honor of doing was forming the Affordable Housing Advisory Committee upon coming into council. And so I've been working with, these are folks that are working with homeless folks, who are neighborhood representatives, who are private developers, who are financiers, who are in public housing. So people with a lot of different heads for affordable housing coming together to try to solve these problems. The incentives thing that Cecil talked about earlier that hadn't been taken advantage of yet, what happened was that when that first came out, the map for, where you could build this dense affordable housing was pretty expansive and big, but the reaction among the citizens was one of, oh my gosh, I don't really know what this means for the future of my neighborhood, so let's not go there yet. And so the map got shrunk down considerably. So going forward, I think we need to be a little smarter about that kind of overlay district and say, well, where is this going to be most appropriate and where is it not? But also what the Affordable Housing Advisory Committee is doing interviews with all these developers that we've been trying to figure out how to come in, how to get them to come in and do this stuff, to kind of get right down to the nuts and bolts of it. And to be able to over the next few years, be able to establish not just incentives, but just straightforward policies that are going to make it easy for folks to be able to come in and give the city what it needs. Because what we found with a lot of these builders who are building is they recognize the need for affordable housing in the city of Asheville. They want to be able to make the numbers work, but they haven't been able to get there. And so I think that the city working in partnership with them is going to be able to do that. I also think we need to be able to have some of these 4 and 6 unit apartment buildings that are historically a part of the fabric of Asheville in more places. I think it should be easier if you want to have an apartment in your house to do that. And I also think when we're talking about affordability, one of the most important things that I brought forward during my city council tenure has been a food action plan and looking at affordable, fresh food access so people who are lower income can have other ways of getting up and into the middle class. Affordable housing is one piece, food is one piece, transportation is one piece, and a job with a good wage is the other.
I can't think of a better note to end on, actually, for what Green Drink stands for. So thank you all very much. Let's give them another round of applause. Thanks, everybody. Green Drink's here next week, and the topic is UNA.